Hi everyone, welcome back to another review. So today's review, got plenty of things to say, but one of them I will start by saying is that I've had this film sitting on my computer for months. I've pretty much been meaning to watch this since like March? Maybe April? It's been there for ages, and then I finally watched it last month and I regret not watching it sooner. So with that being said, let us begin the review. The Field Guide to Evil is a 2018 anthology horror film. Filmmakers from different countries bring stories or folk tales from their country to the anthology. If you have ever seen and enjoyed the ABCs of Death, then you will definitely enjoy The Field Guide to Evil. The obvious similarity is that they operate as anthology horror films, and another similarity is that there is the use of a storybook, and each story is depicted as another chapter in the book, which I quite enjoy if I'm honest. With the ABCs of Death, 26 filmmakers were given a letter. From the letter they are provided, they must choose a word starting with that letter and center their short film about death around that word however they want. In this body of work, each filmmaker chosen is meant to depict or tell a story about a myth or folktale that comes from their native country, and the results are fascinating. I'm going to discuss each story going from last story to first, as I wish to leave the best for last. So this was written and directed by Peter Strickland. This story comes from Hungary and is loosely based on the folktale The Princess's Curse, where two brothers fight for affection of a princess. While I didn't necessarily love the story, as it was very much something I've seen before, what I did love was the style that was used to tell it. The story is told very much like a silent film, written narrations and all, and it's not a style that is used very much anymore, so seeing it was quite a treat. While it is done in color and not black and white, and there is still some sound used, there is still no speaking. This made it feel like being transported back to the 20s. Another aspect of how the story was filmed, oddly enough, reminded me of the BBC version of the Chronicles of Narnia: The Silver Chair. It might have been the obvious nude leotards or cheap quality costumes, but oddly enough, when you put it all together, it actually works, though I wish Strickland had added more to the story that made it feel a touch more unique. This was written and directed by Katrin Gieb from Germany. The story tells us about a druid, a malevolent Bavarian spirit that possesses people and spreads disease. This film certainly delivers what it describes. It doesn't go for metaphors. It depicts the lore as is, which, given the nature of it, is probably the better way to go about it. What I believe it focuses on is the story of two characters and how each responds to their circumstances. One accepts this is how it is and does not fight to change or fix it, while the other desires freedom by any means possible. It was short and to the point, but for all intents and purposes, effective. This was written and directed by Ashim Aluwalia from India. It is based on a Bengal folk legend from 1919. It was quite interesting how this story has an almost documentary feel to it, especially since the director is best known for documentaries. It felt like you're watching an episode of a true crime story where they show you real footage of the crime, so it made this story feel more realistic. I enjoyed the short's use of black and white and how it depicts 20th century imperialism by portraying characters as associates of P.T. Barnum and how they travel the world on his behalf to look for new attractions for his show, taking advantage of the natives of the region. I didn't find it very memorable or effective, as it seemed as though something was missing. I could sense that it was trying to send a message, but I think it got lost in the mail. So this was written and directed by Yanis Veslemis and comes from Greece. The story is about a type of goblin that ventures out in the world of humans, and honestly that's about all I understood. I mean, the description of the tale before the story begins talks about these creatures being the lowliest of devil's children, and yet I felt nothing but sad for this creature. It doesn't really do anything the story says these characters do, so I was confused. While I actually enjoyed the prosthetic work on the goblin, with it taking me back to the days of Ridley Scott's Legend, I was unclear clear on what the story actually was. I suppose one could theorize it's a tale about morality and being consumed by one's greed and gluttony and using old traditions as an excuse for this behavior, but I'm honestly grasping at straws because I really don't know what the story was depicting. If I guessed right, then yay me, but I haven't a clue. At least now I can say I've seen a horror film from Greece. This was written and directed by Calvin Lee Reeder from the United States. The folktale this story is based on is about humanoid children found in the northern woodlands of the US that have abnormally large craniums and are cannibals. This story was without a doubt my least favorite. It was very much what I'd expect from a story out of the US. There was no unique filming style, nothing to it makes it stand out. It was very much shoot and film. The prosthetic work on the children was sad as I could see the prosthesis due to someone not gluing it down properly. The acting was good, but the practical effects were pitiful. There are a significant number of stories that this director could have taken from American folklore, so I was disappointed they went with the cannibalistic people living in the woods. It's such an overused cliche at this point. It feels like the other directors picked tales or lore that, while exist, aren't exactly popular. They tried to do something a bit different, where this director went with all reliable cannibals, and in comparison it just doesn't hold up against the other stories. At least the others had some underlying story about morality or oppression or something. This had nothing. So this film was written and directed, and I know I'm going to butcher her name, Agnieszka Smokzinska from Poland. I'm so sorry if I butcher that name because she directed The Lure and I love that film. So this story isn't a folktale but an allegory about the desire for wisdom. While I'm not entirely sure where the story went, it started off pretty coherent, following an obvious path. Certainly had some disturbing imagery as we're seeing the lengths this person is willing to go for wisdom. When it comes to style, I love the approach, I love the subject, and up until the end I believed it was a great addition to this anthology. It just felt like the story derailed towards the end and became unclear and then just ends. And I find myself wondering, what did that ending mean? Ignoring the conclusion, it's still quite a good film. This was written and directed by Can Evrenol from Turkey. This short is about a demon who comes to women who are pregnant or have just given birth. It was all downhill after Al-Karisi, if I'm honest. I love how this creature in Turkish traditions has similar origins as Lilith and is in many ways as the same person, just used differently, depending on the country. The style reminded me a great deal of Drag Me to Hell, but I wasn't sure if the subject of the film was again about morality and sin, or if it was a physical manifestation of postpartum depression and the burden women carry when left to fend for themselves and others. Whichever we're going for, I still enjoyed it. It too had some disturbing and indeed creepy imagery, and you won't find any happy endings in this story, or any of the stories in this film, to be frank. I found it to be well filmed, well written, and very well performed. However, the main character's pregnant belly was one of the worst I've seen. I don't know who was in charge of making the belly, but someone needs to tell them that a baby does not grow to take up a woman's entire torso. Seriously, her baby bump went from collarbone to pelvis. So this was written and directed by Veronica Franz and Severin Fiala. This story comes from Austria, and I have saved the best for last. Given the film starts with this story, for me, the others couldn't compare to it. This simple 20-minute film with a simple film style and minimal dialogue made me jump 3 times and scream twice, and I loved every second of it. The story is about a being known as the Trud who essentially punishes sinners. It's a brilliant piece about sexual awakenings in an oppressive time and place, and what starts as a story about an outside force that seeks out sinners living in guilt and fear becomes something else. Of all 8 stories, this one scared me the most, which was fantastic. Everything about this story was so understated, but so perfect, and yet had the most effective jump scares I've seen in ages. In fact, I can count on one hand the number of films in the last decade to use new techniques that were this effective, and this is just now one of them. While we all know a jump scare when we see one coming, and they all involve typical cliches, especially something jumping into the shot or the camera panning to a jump scare, this short goes for something different. It's the small things that make the difference. While each moment is clear we are leading to a jump scare, I was expecting a slow build-up or something to jump out at me. I didn't expect the entire scene to cut to a brand new shot with something terrifying in my face, but God, I loved it. As I screamed and looked away, I looked back to find it was still there and I was still freaked out. A story with a great subject matter, simple and effective techniques that has something to say and is able to terrify me. What more could I ask for? For the longest time, I had a strong dislike for anthology films, XX from 2017 being one of them, but after seeing works like Trick or Treat, The ABCs of Death, and now The Field Guide to Evil, I've actually begun to love anthology horror films. They give you this enriching opportunity to experience horror films from around the world that you otherwise might not see, and they're one of the few subgenres that actively tries to showcase just as many female directors as male directors. I could honestly sit here for days talking about how enjoyable this was, but I think it's best I just let everyone see it for themselves. So with that, I once again say that I cannot recommend this film enough. It started on a high and then kind of descended, but oh God, that first story was just so freaking worth it. I don't remember the last time a film made me scream. Now, I know a lot of people say horror films aren't, they don't have to be scary. I agree with that. I, however, do prefer my horror films to be scary, but I think at the end of the day, they just have to make you feel something, get some kind of reaction out of you. With me, I guess I'm going, number one, I want to be scared, but the other is I will settle for being disgusted or disturbed. I could name a couple of films. Oh God, The Demon Inside. I've completely forgotten what its Spanish name is, but that's a film from Mexico, I believe. I watched it. It was absolutely brilliant, but I'm never going to watch it again because it disturbed the things it made me feel. I'm like, oh my God, it's so great because it got that reaction out of me, but I'm like, but I don't ever want to feel those things again, so I can't watch it again. But it's still, that's something that I look for. Yeah, I mean, oh, you want those strong reactions. So for me, I didn't expect it to 20 minutes. I can go and watch a horror film that goes for 2 hours and not get a blip on the radar. And it was a 20-minute short, just this one story. And I was absolutely terrified. Oh, it's the small things in life. So if you are a horror fan, if you like anthologies, if you like short films, definitely watch this. If you have already seen it, please comment down below. Tell me what you thought about it. If not, go out, watch it, find it, see it, then come back and comment and tell me what you thought about it. But I'm very interested because now I've already gone blank on his name. But the film that came from India, the director, the person who directed that film, one of their other films is on my October list, and I didn't know that until after I watched that. I just realized, I'm like, oh, hang on, I'm going to be watching another of his films. So I'm really interested to see what he does with a full-length film. But that's all I have to say today. So as always, thank you so much to my wonderful, wonderful patrons. You are fantastic. So I shall be thanking them up here on the screen, and until next time, bye.